The quantum sensors aboard patrol vessel KX-789 registered the anomaly 3 microseconds before its visual confirmation systems activated. Observer First Class Zalthan's 4 eyes widened as reality itself seemed to tear open before them, a writhing wound in the fabric of space that pulsed with energies their instruments couldn't classify. Unknown spatial disturbance detected at coordinates 447.89. 23. The ship's AI announced with characteristic council precision. Energy signatures exceed known parameters. Requesting guidance. Zalthan's tendrils twitched nervously against their control interface. In 2 decades of border patrol, they'd never encountered anything the ship's AI couldn't at least categorize. Begin standard containment proc. The order died in their throat as something emerged from the rift. At first, Zalthan thought they were witnessing the appearance of a small moon, but as their sensors struggled to define its boundaries, they realized they were staring at a warship. Its hull rippled like liquid mercury, defying visual focus, as if the vessel existed in multiple states simultaneously. By the first laws, Zalthan whispered, their secondary heart beginning to race. The ship was massive, easily dwarfing the largest council dreadnoughts. Its design was unlike anything in their database, organic curves blended with geometric precision in ways that shouldn't be possible, and patterns of light chased across its surface in hypnotic sequences. Attention Council Vessel. A calm human voice transmitted on all frequencies simultaneously, somehow cutting through their security encryption as if it didn't exist. This is Captain Jack Morrison of the Earth Vessel _Prometheus Unbound _. We come in peace, though I understand if you find that hard to believe. Zalthan's blood ran cold. Humans. The exiles. The species the Council had banished 2 centuries ago for their dangerous technological experimentation. Their terminals flooded with incoming data as the massive ship's presence triggered every warning system they had. Initiating defensive protocols, their AI announced, bringing weapons online. The patrol vessel's disruptor arrays charge, targeting solutions appearing on their screens. A soft chuckle came through the comm. Please don't do that, Morrison said, sounding almost paternal. I'd hate for you to waste energy. And frankly, I'm not sure how our hull would react to weapons fire these days. The quantum harmonics are a bit unpredictable. As if to demonstrate his point, the _Prometheus began to move. A dense field of asteroids lay between them, a natural barrier the Council used to funnel traffic through designated lanes. The human ship didn't alter course. Instead, it simply passed through the asteroids as if they weren't there. No impacts, no evasive maneuvers. The rocks seemed to phase right through the hull, or perhaps the hull phased through them. Zalthan's sensors couldn't tell the difference. Impossible, they whispered, all 4 hands frantically working their console, trying to make sense of the readings. Central Command, this is Border Patrol KX-789. We have a situation that requires immediate. Don't worry, Morrison interrupted. Command already knows we're here. In fact, I believe the Council is convening an emergency session as we speak. We've been monitoring their quantum communications since we arrived in system. Zalthan felt their chromatophores pale. The Council's quantum network was supposed to be undetectable, let alone penetrable. What had the humans become during their exile? We'll be proceeding to the Council station now, Morrison continued pleasantly. I suggest you accompany us. History is about to get very interesting. Observer First Class Zalthan, and you'll want to tell your spawn you were there when it happened. The _Prometheus began to move again, its massive form somehow elegant despite its size. As Zalthan reluctantly ordered their vessel to follow, they noticed something that sent a shiver through all their appendages. The human ship wasn't using any known form of propulsion. No engine flare, no gravitational distortion, no quantum wake. It moved as if space itself was simply choosing to relocate it. What exactly had humanity been doing out there in the darkness between the stars? And more importantly, Why had they chosen now to return? The Grand Council chamber erupted into chaos as the holographic display showed the _Prometheus Unbound phase through another defense line, as if it were merely a suggestion. High Counselor Zixtel's crystalline appendages clicked anxiously against his ceremonial chair, a nervous tick he thought he'd abandoned centuries ago. Impossible, thundered Representative Kavax of the militant sphere, his massive ursine form towering over the central podium. No ship can simply ignore fundamental laws of matter. These readings must be falsified. The chamber's primary display shifted, showing new angles of the human vessel. Its liquid metal hull rippled with patterns that made several council members look away, their evolved sensory organs unable to process the quantum fluctuations emanating from the ship's surface. I assure you, First Science Director Exil's voice wavered as she manipulated the holographic data, her feathered crest flattening in distress. These readings have been verified by 17 different monitoring stations. The human vessel appears to be evolving. Each scan reveals new properties, as if it's learning from our attempts to analyze it. Zixtel watched his political career crumbling before his eyes. 2 centuries ago, he had led the coalition that voted for humanity's exile. Their reckless experimentation threatens the very fabric of space-time, he had declared then, to thunderous applause. Now those same words were being played back on several delegates' personal displays, shared with barely concealed mockery. Our most advanced tactical AI has completed its analysis, announced Military Coordinator Vexnar, his mechanical implants pulsing with agitation. A new simulation appeared above the council floor, showing the Prometheus surrounded by the council's entire First Defense Fleet. The simulation ran, and within moments, the chamber fell silent as they watched their most powerful weapons either pass harmlessly through the human ship or be absorbed by its strange hull. The vessel appears to be. Vexnar's vocoder crackled with unusual emotion. Toying with us. It's allowing our scans, but each analysis reveals capabilities that our previous scans didn't detect. It's as if they're gradually showing us just how outmatched we are, finished Zixtel, finally finding his voice. This isn't just a demonstration of power, it's a lesson. The chamber's AI updated the tactical display, showing the Prometheus's current position relative to the council station. The vessel had created some sort of spatial anomaly around itself, existing in what the sensors could only describe as probable space, simultaneously present and not present at multiple coordinates. We're receiving a new transmission from Captain Morrison, announced the chamber's administrative AI. Its neutral tone a stark contrast to the tension in the room. The human captain's voice filled the chamber, still maintaining that irritatingly casual tone. Honorable council members, I couldn't help but notice you're running combat simulations. I should mention that your AI's predictions, while impressive, are based on physics as you understand them. We abandoned those limitations long ago. Would you like a small demonstration? Before anyone could respond, the Prometheus did something. The chamber's displays flickered, and every AI in the station simultaneously reported that the human ship was now occupying zero space, while also existing at all points within a light-year radius. The paradox forced several systems to automatically reboot. By the void, whispered Kivax, his militant bluster evaporating. What did they become out there in the dark? Zixtel rose from his chair, his crystalline form catching the chamber's light. We exiled them because we feared their potential for destruction. We never considered that isolation would only accelerate their development. He turned to face the assembled council, knowing his next words would be recorded in history. And now they've returned, not seeking revenge, but showing us exactly what we threw away. The question is, why now? The chamber's main screen shifted again, showing new data streaming in from deep space sensors. The Prometheus's hull was emitting patterns that seemed to be reaching into somewhere else, as if it was trying to detect something that hadn't arrived yet. something that even the humans feared. The Council's reception chamber, designed to intimidate visitors with its towering crystalline arches and quantum-locked gravity fields, fell eerily silent as Captain Jack Morrison simply walked through their most sophisticated security barrier as if it were mist. His dress uniform, a deep navy blue that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways, shifted subtly with each movement, making him appear simultaneously solid and ethereal. "Quite an impressive setup you have here," Morrison said, his weathered face bearing a slight smile as he glanced at the now useless security grid. "The quantum harmonics are particularly elegant, though a bit outdated. We cracked that encryption method about, 70 years ago." High Counselor Zixtel's crystalline form vibrated with barely contained tension. "You mock our security while claiming to come in peace, Captain Morrison." "Not mocking, Counselor. Observing." Morrison's steel-gray eyes swept the chamber, noting the positions of every council representative. "Just as we've been observing for the past 2 centuries. Did you really think exile would break us? Humanity doesn't wither in darkness. We learn to bend the light." With a casual gesture, Morrison activated something on his sleeve. The chamber's space itself seemed to flex, and suddenly the _Prometheus Unbound _ was there, not as a hologram, but as if the chamber had expanded to incorporate a cross-section of the actual vessel. Council members gasped as they found themselves simultaneously inside their secure chamber and within the human ship's quantum engineering bay. "This is impossible," whispered First Science Director Exiled, her feathers bristling as her instruments failed to explain what they were seeing. "You cannot merge separate spaces without causing a quantum cascade failure," Morrison finished, walking through what appeared to be both spaces simultaneously. "That's the problem with your species' approach to physics. You look for reasons why things can't be done, instead of finding ways to make the impossible possible." He reached the center of the merged spaces and pressed another control. The air shimmered, and suddenly they were surrounded by stars, but not the stars of known space. These were the stars of humanity's exile, the dark spaces between galaxies where they had been banished. "While you were perfecting your quantum locks," Morrison continued, his voice taking on a harder edge, "we were building this." The view shifted, revealing massive structures hidden in the void. Shipyards that dwarfed anything the Council had ever constructed, research stations that bent reality around themselves, and ships, dozens of ships like the _Prometheus _, each one different, each one impossible. "By the first laws," Kavax rumbled, his Ursine frame shrinking back despite himself. "How many?" "Enough," Morrison said simply. "But that's not why we're here." He gestured again, and the stellar display shifted, showing something that made every council member's blood run cold. Massive shapes moved in the darkness between galaxies, things that seemed to exist in more dimensions than space allowed. 200 years ago, you exiled us for pushing the boundaries of science too far." Morrison's voice cut through the stunned silence. "You feared we would break reality itself. The irony is, that's exactly what we needed to do, because reality itself is about to break us all." The display zoomed in on one of the shapes, revealing machinery that seemed to fold in on itself infinitely, defying comprehension. Several council eyes crashed attempting to analyze the image. "These entities have been harvesting advanced civilizations for millions of years," Morrison continued, his tone grim. "They're not alien in the way you understand it. There's something older, something that exists partially outside normal spacetime. And they're coming. Why should we believe you?" Zixtel demanded, though his crystalline form had paled considerably. Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Because in exactly 47 seconds, every quantum sensor in council space will detect them. We've spent 2 centuries learning to see them. Now it's your turn." As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the station. On every screen, in every frequency, something massive was appearing at the edge of council space, something that shouldn't exist. Humanity hadn't returned seeking revenge. They'd returned with a warning. The Council's emergency session chamber had never been this quiet. On the central display, Captain Morrison's temporal imaging system showed what conventional sensors could not: massive geometric structures phasing in and out of normal spacetime, each one larger than a solar system. "We call them harvesters," Morrison explained, his uniform rippling with subdued patterns as he manipulated the holographic controls. Though that's an oversimplification. They don't just harvest civilizations, they consume them. Technology, biology, culture, everything. The display shifted, showing recovered footage that made several council members recoil. A planet, advanced enough for early space travel, simply unraveled. Its matter didn't break apart. It decomposed into something more fundamental than atoms, pulled into patterns that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. Impossible. First Science Director Exiled whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. Matter cannot be transformed across dimensional barriers. Morrison finished. That's exactly what they do. They don't destroy civilizations, Director. They upgrade them. Convert them into components of their own multidimensional architecture. He gestured, and the Prometheus's sensors revealed more detail. The harvester structures weren't just machines. They were amalgamations of countless civilizations, each one processed and integrated into their impossible geometry. "We detected our first proof of them 60 years into our exile," Morrison continued, his face grim. "A temporal echo from one of their previous harvests. Took us another 3 decades just to develop sensors that could properly perceive them. What you're seeing now exists partially in 11 different dimensions." Military Coordinator Vexnar's cybernetic implants whirred as they struggled to process the data. If these entities are so advanced, how have they remained undetected? Morrison's laugh was hollow. "Undetected? Look again." He overlaid a new pattern on the stellar map, showing gravitational anomalies throughout Council space. "They've been here all along. We just couldn't see them. Like deep-sea fish trying to comprehend a satellite in orbit." The chamber's AI attempted to analyze the overlay, then crashed. 3 backup systems did the same. The pattern simply didn't fit any known model of physics or space-time. "Our exile forced us to abandon conventional thinking," Morrison explained, restoring the systems with a casual wave. "When you have nothing left to lose, impossible becomes just another problem to solve. The Prometheus isn't just a ship, it's a proof of concept. We had to break the laws of physics just to perceive the threat. And now they're coming." High Counselor Exiled asked, his crystalline form vibrating with fear frequencies. "They're already here." Morrison's words fell like stones in the silent chamber. The display shifted again, showing temporal distortions spreading through nearby systems. "What you're detecting now is just them becoming visible to conventional space, like a whale breaching the ocean's surface." Kovacs rose from his seat, his massive form trembling. How do we fight something like this?" "Conventional weapons are useless," Morrison said, bringing up footage of the Prometheus's first encounter with a harvester probe. The human ship's hybrid physics allowed it to engage the entity on its own dimensional level, turning its space warping drive into both weapon and shield. "This is why we came back," Morrison continued, his voice softer now. "Not for revenge. Not to prove you wrong about us. We came back because we finally understood why we had to be exiled." The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. Exiled's crystalline form refracted light in patterns of dawning comprehension. "You needed to be free of our restrictions," the High Counselor whispered. "Free to develop the very technologies we feared, because they're the only things that can save us." Morrison nodded, his expression grim but determined. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, Counselor. It's our willingness to cross lines that shouldn't be crossed, to break rules that shouldn't be broken, when survival demands it." The temporal sensors pulsed with new warnings. More harvester signatures were appearing. "We have 5 days. Morrison announced, his uniform shifting to combat configurations. 5 days to upgrade your ships with our hybrid systems, to teach your crews how to fight in 11 dimensions, to prepare for a war unlike anything in your history. He looked each council member in the eye. The question is, are you ready to break some rules? Lieutenant Hannah Walker couldn't help but smile as another group of council engineers stumbled out of the Prometheus's quantum engineering bay, their various sensory organs showing signs of severe conceptual distress. Only the Arctians, with their crystalline neural networks, seemed capable of handling more than an hour of exposure to human tech. Remember, she called after them, reality is more of a suggestion than a rule. You enjoy traumatizing them too much, Lieutenant, Morrison said, appearing beside her through what looked like a localized space-time fold. A captain's privilege on the Prometheus. Can't help it, sir. Their minds are so. She gestured vaguely, linear. The engineering bay around them pulsed with exotic energies. Quantum matrices shifted like living things, the ship's hybrid core adapting and evolving in real time. What had started as desperate experiments in Exile had become an entirely new form of technology, one that treated the laws of physics as a starting point rather than a limitation. Show me what you've managed to teach them, Morrison said, his uniform synchronizing with the ship's quantum field. Walker pulled up a holographic display, but rather than appearing above her hand, it seemed to exist in all possible locations simultaneously before settling on the most probable one. The Arctians are making progress. They've actually managed to grasp the basics of probability manipulation. Watch this. She gestured to a nearby workstation where an Arctian engineer, their crystalline form refracting impossible colors, was working on a smaller version of the Prometheus's quantum core. As they adjusted the controls, the device began to exist in multiple states simultaneously. They understood the concept once we explained it in gambling terms. Walker grinned. Turns out betting against reality makes more sense than quantum probability manipulation through dimensional bleeding. Morrison nodded approvingly. And the others? Walker's expression turned more serious. The cybernetic races are struggling. They're too bound by binary logic. The organic species are actually doing better. They can at least accept that something might work even if they don't understand why. She brought up another display, this one showing the progress of Council ship upgrades. We've managed to install basic hybrid drives on 3 of their capital ships. They can't phase through matter yet, but they can at least perceive and interact with extra-dimensional space. It's a start. The ship's AI, though AI was a vast oversimplification of what it had become, manifested as a complex pattern of quantum possibilities. Current integration success rate is 34% above initial projections, Lieutenant Walker. The Council species are adapting faster than anticipated. Fear is a hell of a motivator, Morrison mused. How are they handling the weapons integration? Walker led him to another section of the bay where Council weapons were being modified with human tech. This is where it gets interesting. Their energy weapons are actually pretty advanced. We just had to teach them to stop caring about conservation of energy. She activated one of the modified weapons. Instead of firing a beam, it created a localized paradox, a space where energy simultaneously existed and didn't exist, rendering traditional shields useless. The hard part was convincing them to ignore the safety protocols, Walker explained. They kept trying to prevent quantum breakdown, when that's exactly what we needed. Sometimes you have to break reality to save it. Morrison watched as another team of Council engineers entered the bay, their expressions a mix of terror and fascination. They're still afraid of what we've become, aren't they? Can you blame them? Walker gestured at their surroundings. Look at what Exiled did to us. We took their greatest fears about human recklessness and turned them into our greatest weapons. We don't just bend physics. We break it, rebuild it, and make it thank us for the privilege. The ship's quantum core pulsed, adapting to some new possibility it had discovered. In the 2 centuries since their exile, Humanity had learned that the universe's laws were more like guidelines, and guidelines could be rewritten. "Sir," Walker said, her expression growing serious, "do you think we'll be ready in time?" "The harvesters." Morrison's face hardened. "We have to be. Because if we fail, it won't just be extinction. It'll be absorption. And I'll be damned if humanity's greatest achievement becomes just another component in their cosmic machinery." The quantum core flared again, as if in agreement. They had 5 days to teach the Council how to break reality. It would have to be enough. Commander Marcus Reynolds watched the holographic simulation collapse for the 3rd time as the Arxian engineer attempted to merge their traditional quantum mechanics with human probability manipulation. The crystalline being's frustration manifested as discordant light patterns across their surface. "You're still thinking in absolutes," Reynolds said, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "Try this." He reached into the simulation space and literally twisted reality, creating a localized paradox where 2 contradictory states existed simultaneously. Sometimes the wrong answer is exactly what you need. But the calculations are invalid. The Arxian, whose name approximated to Crystal Song in Darkness, protested. "The energy differentials cannot." "Stop calculating," Reynolds interrupted, his augmented eyes glowing as he manipulated the quantum field. "Start feeling. What does the energy want to do?" In the massive training bay of the Prometheus dozens of similar scenes played out. Council engineers struggled to unlearn centuries of rigid physical laws, while human instructors taught them to embrace chaos. The ship's adaptive walls pulsed with probability waves, creating a space where conventional physics was more suggestion than law. "Commander," a synthetic voice chimed, belonging to a cybernetic collective engineer, "our logic engines cannot process these contradictions. The fundamental laws are more flexible than you think." Reynolds finished, walking over to their station. He pulled up the code governing their logic engines. "Look here, you've programmed absolute constraints into your basic functions, but the harvesters operate beyond those constraints. To fight them, we need to do the same." Above them, through the quantum transparent ceiling, Council ships underwent their transformation. Human technical teams swarmed over their hulls, installing reality warping drives and probability manipulators. The once sleek vessels now bristled with technology that shouldn't exist, their forms beginning to shift and ripple like the Prometheus. "Progress report." Captain Morrison's voice echoed through quantum space, his image appearing simultaneously at every workstation. "We're at 63% integration on the primary fleet," Reynolds responded, his augmented vision scanning real-time data. "The organic crews are adapting faster than expected. The synthetic ones," he glanced at the struggling cybernetic engineer, "are having philosophical issues." Morrison's image nodded. "Show them." Reynolds understood immediately. With a gesture, he activated the temporal viewers, revealing what the harvesters had done to synthetic civilizations they'd encountered. The cybernetic engineers' lights flickered in what might have been horror as they watched entire machine worlds broken down and rewritten into impossible geometries. "Your logic, your constraints, your fundamental laws," Reynolds said softly. "The harvesters will use them against you. They don't break rules. They exist in spaces where our rules never existed at all." Something changed in the cybernetic engineer's posture. Their lights shifted to new patterns, and when they turned back to their console, their movements were different. Less rigid. More human. Across the bay, Crystal Song in Darkness had finally managed to maintain a stable paradox field. The crystalline being's surface rippled with something close to joy as they manipulated contradictory states of matter. "They're learning," Morrison observed, his quantum-shifted image showing satisfaction. "Learning to unlearn," Reynolds corrected. "That's always been humanity's real strength. Not just breaking rules, but understanding why they need to be broken." A sudden alarm cut through the bay. On every display, temporal sensors showed massive distortions spreading through nearby systems. The harvesters were moving faster than predicted. "Time's up," Morrison announced, his image hardening. "All ships, battle stations. Ready or not, the dance is about to begin." Reynolds watched as Council engineers rushed to their posts, their movements now carrying hints of human unpredictability. In just a few days, they'd begun to grasp what humanity had learned in 2 centuries of exile. That safety lay not in rigid adherence to natural law, but in the willingness to rewrite those laws entirely. As the Prometheus's quantum core spun up to combat readiness, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. They had broken every rule in the book to prepare for this moment. Now they would find out if it was enough. "All hands," Morrison's voice resonated through quantum space. "Prepare for dimensional shift. Let's show these harvesters what happens when you push humanity into the dark." The battle for existence itself was about to begin. The harvester emerged from 11-dimensional space like a geometric nightmare, its impossible architecture defying every law of physics the Council had ever known. But Captain Jack Morrison didn't see an unstoppable cosmic horror. He saw a puzzle waiting to be solved. Target locked in probable space. Lieutenant Walker's voice rang through the Prometheus's quantum shifted bridge. Reality anchors holding at 47% efficiency. Morrison watched as his fleet, human ingenuity merged with Council precision, moved into attack formation. The upgraded Council ships rippled with barely contained paradoxes, their new hybrid drives allowing them to perceive the true nature of their enemy. By the first laws, Kivax's voice crackled through quantum space from his flagship, its consuming probability itself. The harvester's surface fractaled into infinite patterns, each facet showing the absorbed remains of civilizations it had processed. Cities, worlds, entire species rendered down into components of its impossible geometry. "Not today," Morrison growled. "Execute pattern Omega-7. Show them what humanity learned in the dark." The Prometheus responded instantly, its liquid metal hull fragmenting into quantum duplicates. Each copy existed in a different probability state, attacking the harvester from multiple timelines simultaneously. Council gunners, trained by Walker's engineering teams, opened fire with weapons that shouldn't exist. Reality cracked. The harvester reacted, its surface shifting to absorb the quantum assault. But humanity had spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment. As the entity attempted to process their attacks, the Prometheus's temporal duplicates began to desynchronize. "Phase shift complete," Walker reported, her hands dancing through probability fields. "Quantum resonance at maximum divergence. Ready for the kill shot, sir." Morrison allowed himself a grim smile. "Send the signal to the Council fleet. Time to show them why they were right to fear us." Across quantum space, the upgraded Council ships began to move in perfect synchronization. Their hybrid drives, powered by human recklessness and alien precision, tore holes in dimensional barriers that shouldn't have been breached. The harvester, for the first time in its ancient existence, hesitated. "Now," Morrison commanded. The Prometheus executed its masterstroke. Instead of fighting the harvester's reality warping capabilities, they amplified them. Every quantum duplicate, every Council ship, every impossible weapon focused their power into a single point of infinite probability. Space itself screamed. "Sir," Walker's voice carried equal parts terror and excitement. "We're causing a cascade failure in its dimensional matrix. It's trying to process too many possibilities at once." The harvester's surface began to fragment, its perfectly ordered geometry corrupted by chaos theory made manifest. The civilizations it had absorbed began to break free, their patterns dissolving back into quantum noise. "All ships, full power to temporal shields," Morrison ordered. "This is going to be one hell of a probability wave." The harvester's death was beautiful in its impossibility. As its dimensional matrix collapsed, it released every civilization it had ever absorbed, not back into reality, but into pure potential. Quantum ghosts of long-dead worlds briefly flickered through spacetime before dissolving into the void. When the quantum dust settled, the Council fleet hung in space, their hulls still rippling with borrowed human chaos. On their bridges, alien crews stared in stunned silence at where the Harvester had been. They had just witnessed the impossible, not just the death of a godlike entity, but proof that humanity's reckless experiments had saved them all. "Status report," Morrison called, his voice carrying through quantum space. "Multiple timeline divergences detected," Walker responded, checking her readings. Reality trying to compensate for the probability shock. "But sir, we did it. We actually did it." Before Morrison could respond, new alarms blared. The temporal sensors, still tracking 11-dimensional space, showed more harvesters approaching. Dozens of them. They felt that, Morrison realized, and now they're coming to investigate. Kavax's voice, now steady with newfound confidence, came through the quantum link. "Then we'll show them the same greeting, Captain. My crews are ready. We've learned your ways of war." Morrison looked at his display, watching the Council ships move with decidedly human unpredictability. They had taken beings who feared chaos and taught them to wield it as a weapon. Now it was time to show the Harvesters why that was such a dangerous combination. "All ships," he commanded, "prepare for temporal combat. Let's show these cosmic horrors why you should never back humanity into a corner." The real battle was about to begin. The Grand Council chamber had changed. Where once there were rigid barriers between species, now quantum probability fields rippled freely through the space. The _Prometheus hung visible through the quantum transparent ceiling, its impossible hull a reminder of how far they'd all come. Captain Jack Morrison stood before the assembled council, his uniform synchronizing with the chamber's new reality-warped architecture. The final battle had left its mark on him. A temporal scar across his face that existed in multiple probabilities at once. "The last Harvester fell 6 hours ago," he announced, manipulating the quantum display to show the aftermath. "Their dimensional matrices have been completely dissolved. Humanity's exile taught us how to break reality, and we used that knowledge to save it instead." High Counselor Zixtel's crystalline form resonated with newfound frequencies, patterns learned from human quantum technology. "We owe humanity more than an apology," they declared. "We owe you our future." "No," Morrison corrected, his voice firm but gentle. "You owe yourselves. Your crews fought alongside us. Your engineers learned to break their own rules. Your leaders trusted us when we asked you to ignore everything you thought you knew about physics." Lieutenant Walker stepped forward, her hands weaving probability patterns that made the chamber's AI sigh in contentment. "The quantum integration is complete," she reported. "The Council fleet's hybrid drives are now self-sustaining. They've learned to evolve on their own." From his newly modified command pod, Kavax rumbled in satisfaction. The Ursine warrior's cybernetics now pulsed with human chaos patterns. "We have tasted warfare in 11 dimensions," he declared. "There is no going back to the old ways." Morrison nodded, then activated his final presentation. The space above the Council filled with images that drew gasps from every species present. Hidden shipyards in the dark between galaxies, each one producing vessels that ignored physics in new and spectacular ways. "During our exile, we built more than the _Prometheus_, Morrison explained. We built an entire fleet of impossible ships, each one different, each one breaking reality in its own unique way. And now," he smiled, "they're yours too. You would trust us with such power." First Science Director Exiled asked, her feathers shimmering with quantum possibilities. "After we feared it so much." "Trust was never the issue," Morrison replied. "Understanding was. You had to see why we push boundaries, why we break rules, why we refuse to accept impossibility as an answer. The Harvesters taught you that lesson better than we ever could." Crystal Song in Darkness, now head of the new Quantum Integration Division, chimed in with harmonics that would have been impossible weeks ago. "We have learned that safety lies not in avoiding danger, but in mastering it. Humanity showed us that the rules we fought to protect were actually holding us back. Morrison's quantum scar flickered as he smiled. Which is why we're proposing a new organization. Not a council that restricts and regulates, but an alliance that pushes boundaries together. Human chaos tempered by council wisdom, council precision enhanced by human creativity. The chamber's quantum field rippled with possibility as the assembled species considered his words. They had seen their most fundamental beliefs about reality shattered, then rebuilt into something stronger. They had watched their ships phase through solid matter, their weapons create paradoxes as ammunition, their crews learned to think in 11 dimensions. The harvesters weren't the last impossible threat out there, Morrison continued. But together, we'll be ready for whatever comes next. Because now we all know the truth. The rules of reality are really more like guidelines anyway. High Counselor Zixtal rose, their crystalline form refracting light in ways that defy physics. 2 centuries ago, we exiled humanity because we feared you would break reality. Today, we thank you for teaching us why reality sometimes needs to be broken. The vote was unanimous. As quantum fields rippled through the chamber, as impossible ships danced through probability space above them, as AI systems calculated in 11 dimensions, the galaxy entered a new era, one where the line between possible and impossible had become wonderfully, terrifyingly blurred. Humanity had returned from exile not seeking revenge, but bringing revolution. They had taught the galaxy that true safety lies not in hiding from chaos, but in learning to dance with it, and the dance was just beginning.